As of this morning, we have had 15 applications for our bicyclist and pedestrian coordinator. It closes tomorrow. We expect the rush to hit tomorrow. That's generally how that goes. But currently, 40% of those are internal to Idaho, 60% are external to Idaho. So again, we look forward to closing that out tomorrow, and we'll start those interviews immediately. I will just say this: the legislature continues. There are challenges on all fronts. I know our lobbyists are consistently in the forefront of battle, as a couple of our staff members right here, but it's very interesting to see some of the turns that have taken place the last day or two regarding transportation funding, different issues with transportation. I know that this continues on as we move forward, and as we indicated to you just a little bit ago, it's more than likely the legislature will recess and then recall themselves when the federal dollars are back from President Biden's bill that was recently signed. We will keep you posted on that. So again, the legislature continues. We are setting up, as you recall, we've been in good coordination, thanks to Commissioner May, on the Highlands and the Highlands Neighborhood Association and such. We will be setting up a walking tour with our staff and representatives of the Highlands Neighborhood Association, probably in the late March, early April timeframe, to again walk the areas that they'd like us to take a look at, and of course we'll back brief you as we move forward. Starting now, we are gearing down on winter operations, and starting now we are gearing up on spring and summer operations. We fully intend to do chip sealing this year. All the signs and all the health requirements are all pointing in the right direction. And such, and of course maintenance will have an update for you on operations as we get closer. As to the COVID update and such, as you know, things across the state are going well. What's interesting is they're seeing a spike in eastern Idaho when it comes down to this. But according to all things going, we continue to bring back our teams and team members on the process that I briefed you on earlier, and hope to be fully standing up here in the early summer time frame as we move forward in operations. 50th anniversary. As you came in, you probably saw several of the pictorial cards that are going up showing the history of the district, focusing on people, most important aspect, people. And we'll have some finals for your review here very, very shortly. And such, the proclamation that you all approved last week is with Senator Winder. And such, we expect that out shortly. And then, as you know, we are putting together a time capsule to have you appropriately dedicate and place somewhere into the ground and such. But what I'd like to ask the commission is, if there's something that the commission as a whole would like to have in that time capsule, we'd really appreciate your thoughts on that and such. I have asked each of the directorates to provide one item to put in that time capsule that represents what they believe is most important. And I won't share you what I'm putting in there until you'll see it here in a little bit, but that's a different story. So commissioners, in a nutshell, operations are doing well. The health of the force is well. We are moving forward with a lot of tasks across all disciplines. So with that, that's my director's update for today. I wanted to remind Commissioner Goldthorpe that I did not go over, and such. You have plenty of time as we move forward. So I do stand for any questions you might have at this point.
Well, you never go over. That's usually Commissioner Pickering's fault.
Oh no, neck and neck with Jim.
All right,
I do have a question, though.
sure. All bets are off.
Yep. Bruce, could you give us with the chip sealing and gearing up for spring, are we going to have to do more because we didn't do as much? Kind of what's could you educate me on like what that looks like for this coming spring and summer?
Mr. President, Commissioner Pickering, no, we will not be doing more. Our maintenance team has actually broken out all of Ada County in phases. Well, luck being what it is, it's not going to be overwhelming like it was 2 years ago, I think it is, where we attempted to do 500 miles of chip sealing. When maintenance comes to you here in the next month or two, they will have a top-to-bottom review of phases, zones. Here's what the expectations are. Now, I will say, we're good this year. It'll be more difficult the following year, and it'll be really difficult that following year based on the growth that's gone on and such. So we will have a new concept, I guess an additional concept of another zone that we'd like to move forward. We do the analysis on this to make sure there's no impact to the pavement conditioning and such, and it does spread it out a little bit more.
Thank you.
All right,
Mr. President,
yes,
sorry, I have the time. So I appreciate that the chip sealing is going forward. I also think that the maintenance triage that we have for winter maintenance is very helpful because it helps us determine what are the priorities and secondary and tertiary. And so I'd like us to start applying that to all maintenance, the same sort of triage, so that as the director points out, as we approach an era where we don't have the resources to maintain everything at the same level, we have a criteria that sets that, and that criteria would be well vetted with the public. This is where we will prioritize, and we'll work our way down, and things like connectivity and what kind of services are critical along those streets would be part of that criteria. So I think we have the time now to develop that sort of prioritization triage for all of our maintenance that we have from winter maintenance.
thank you.
Mr. President and all commissioners, please don't misunderstand what I've said. We don't have much time. We are on afterburner. We've been on afterburner, and we'll continue to be on afterburner to provide the requirements that the cities have asked for and what you've directed us to do. So there's no, we'll get it done, but there's no extra time.
Yeah, I've done my
All
part.
the more reason to have that.
I tried to
more
fix
reason
the
to have that.
shoulders in front of my house the other. Oh, there goes Jennifer.
Well, commissioners, you have about 5 more minutes before you
Thank you.
formally start.
So when he says it's time, you get out. So,
It's true, though.
so who can check it out?
It's already gotten some.
Oh, you mean new admirers are sending you messages? It's awesome.
No, it's not.
Okay, I know. I get that all the time.
Great, Jeff. See how you like it.
You're,
What?
well, I would probably make fun of it publicly if it were me.
On the way here, I drove past that accident. It was actually not at Maple Grove. It was about another
Send again?
mile,
Oh, it's back to send, okay, yes.
mile to the west. There, I forget the name of the road. I think it's near, is it Jordan Road or Joplin Road? One of them comes in. It was right around there. So I get a close look at it. But it reminded me on this trip I was on. sure it was caused by.
Videos are everywhere. I get to see the reason they gave me chills is that I had no chance.
And your mics are not on yet. They are?
It's not there in another.
They're not on.
And, I mean, yeah. They had two little puppies with them. You just see these two.
You think it happened, you know?
Steve, what?
And then I imagine.
Yes. People were rappelling down. Follow us on Facebook.
It's time.
Mr. President, Commissioners, it's 12 o'clock.
Thank you, Director Wong. If the audience would please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God.
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, all of you, for joining us for today's commission meeting. I would entertain a motion to accept the agenda.
I'll move to accept the agenda.
Second,
Second.
all in favor, aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. Then we'll go to the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion on any of these items unless a commissioner or citizen so requests, in which case the item will be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda. All consent items are commission action items unless noted. Do I have a motion to accept the consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. And we'll go to our regular agenda items. The first one is Resolution 2340, which involves the vacation and exchange of public right-of-way at North Edgewood Lane, the Schneider vacation. And this will be a request for adoption, and we'll hear from Dave Serdar, our right-of-way supervisor.
Thank you, President Goldthorpe, Commissioners. For the record, David Serdar, Right-of-Way Supervisor, ACHD. This is a public hearing and decision briefing for a right-of-way vacation on Edgewood Lane in Eagle. ACHD received an application from Dylan and Erica Schneider. This vacation was required as part of the Eastfield Estates rezone application. After approval of this vacation, a final plat will need to be signed on it. The vacation area is half an acre, and ACHD has received the $2,500 application fee. The final recording will not take place until ACHD receives the $49,511.25. As can be seen, the proposed vacation is the area in red, right there. This area used to be Edgewood Lane prior to the Hill Street realignment that took place in approximately 2015. This section remained in ACHD ownership because it provided legal access to this home right here. This is a close-up view of the vacation. The vacation goes to the circle, which ACHD determined to be the terminus of Edgewood Lane at the time. And it also contains, as you can see, there's actually a canal here, and some of this vacation includes property encumbered by the canal. The appraised value of the vacation, excuse me, is $49,511.25. It is staff recommendation that the Commission adopt Resolution 2340 as submitted and vacate the property. I will remain standing for any questions.
Are there any questions of Mr. Serdar by the Commission?
Mr. President,
Yes.
just one quick question. The comment was made that the property was retained initially due to access required for the property that's there at the corner of Hill Road and Old Hill Road, I guess. The access issue, that's no longer an issue after the realignment of the road? Is that what we're dealing with?
President Goldthorpe, Commissioner. What the issue was at the time is we couldn't force them to take the property at the time and make them offset the cost of the property.
Okay, so.
The people that are doing it now are the subsequent owners to the property.
Okay, so access, after the realignment of surrounding roads, there were no access issues. It was simply a matter of this property's left over, the owner could buy it or not as they chose, and that's where we are.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Are there any other questions? Any comments? Then this is a public hearing, and so we will now open the public hearing. Stacy, do you have anyone who is signed on to address us today?
We do not have anybody signed up to testify.
In that case, I'll just close the public hearing and put the matter in front of the commission for a motion.
Mr. President?
Yes.
I move that we approve Resolution 2340, vacation, exchange of public right-of-way at North Edgewood Lane, the Schneider vacation.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Then the motion passes. Item number 2 of the regular agenda concerns a letter to the city of Boise and Ada County This, as many of you who were in attendance last week will remember, we discussed a section of Maple Grove Road between Victory and Amity, correct? Yes. And some conversation was held with regards to the feasibility of doing designs for 3 lanes, 5 lanes, and we realized that we did not have adequate input from the city, or neither the city or the county. So the decision was made to send a letter under my signature to both the city and the county, asking for clarification as to what they would, their priority was. We have since heard from the county, and they have told us they would prefer that it was a 5-lane configuration. So there's no reason to include the county on this letter, and so I'm going to suggest that the county not be on the letter and just the city. The city has asked us to allow them a little bit of time to discuss this, because they understand all of the concerns that were addressed or given last week, and they will address them to us. In the meantime, Commissioner Hanson indicated that he would like to send a personal letter instead of the letter from the commission under my signature, and that, of course, is just fine. What I would like to hear from any of the commission has to do with their thoughts on the letter that is ready for my signature once we've minus the county as far as a recipient.
Mr. President,
Yes.
I just want to clarify. Thank you. I just want to thank you very much. I wanted to make sure everybody knew and had plenty of time to read. We had a little back and forth discussing, I think some additional issues should be raised with the city and county. So I appreciate the opportunity to put this in front, and then I don't have to recite it, so my comments will be short. But I did note that the letter from the county was dated February 23rd. So I wonder whether, in fact, the county has received, since the county hasn't sort of re-looked at this.
Yes, Jim, they actually have, and they sent us some emails.
Oh, emails.
Yes.
I haven't seen those. I was just looking at the letter that the director forwarded to us, which was sent to us, which was their deadline to send to us in February. So that's what I was looking at. So I don't have a problem. You can send it to the county or not, but I may go ahead and send mine to the county just so they know what my concerns are.
Okay.
And,
Super.
oh, and anyone else can join me on that letter if you want. It's not, I've said it all before.
Okay, yes, I know. But this new
Mr.
county commission
President?
hasn't all heard it. I'm sure of that. Mary?
Yeah. I have no problem with you doing a letter as you are the spokesperson for the commission. And when you sign a letter and you send it out on commission letterhead, you're speaking for the commission. I do have a couple questions. I don't understand why we have a personal letter from Commissioner Hanson on the agenda that we distributed out to everyone. That would not be on commission letterhead, so it really doesn't require approval. And the other concern that I have about that is we left it with staff. We did the strategic pause. They're going to take a look at it. They're going to come back to us with their findings. We're going to have further discussion and perhaps take a vote on a path forward. And with Commissioner Hanson's personal letter, which he certainly has every right to do, he is stating his preference for something that very well will come back before the commission. So I think that's getting a little bit ahead of where we are. And I would question whether or not by doing that, before we've even heard back from staff and had our discussion as commissioners on the dais, which is our protocol, if perhaps then you may need to think about recusing yourself. But I don't know if it's really appropriate for you to telegraph your position on something that's going to come back and then all commissioners will be weighing in on. We're kind of getting ahead of staff. I think you've stated your opinion before, so people are aware of that, but I do have concerns about a letter. And as you like to say, Commissioner Hanson, nothing personal. This is just my little apprehension and concern why we have a personal letter on our agenda.
Thank you, Mary.
It's not something we would approve.
Right. Any other comments, questions about the letter? Okay.
Commissioner Goldthorpe, we
Yes.
do have public that has signed up to testify on this matter.
This is a legislative matter. I had absolutely no intention of taking public testimony on it, and we will not be doing that.
Okay, thank you.
President Goldthorpe, just a
Yes.
quick question. So, as somebody that's new, I'm hearing Commissioner May's comments, and I've read the letter that we're intending to send as a commission. However, I want to just push back a little bit. I think Commissioner Hanson brings up some really good points about just general design and philosophies. I don't think he's really going into getting ahead of his skis like Commissioner May might have been inferring. So I think as the letter is written now, I think it's good. I'm very willing to support it, but I think in terms of concept and ideas, it's really good to, in my mind, kind of open the door for more conversations. And I think the letter that you've currently written does do that, but I think there's certain elements that Commissioner Hanson's, it does kind of open the door a little bit further to say there's no harm in opening the door for multiple design options, if that makes sense.
Whoa, that we brought up last week, and that's absolutely 100%
Right.
correct and accurate. And the only thing that will determine, if anything does, as to any conflicts of interest or reasons to be recused or anything else will be dependent on what happens here on. So,
Mr. President?
Yes.
And I certainly support his right to share his opinions but it's not usually done with commission approval. So anytime a commissioner wants to weigh in with a particular city, if it's not a letter coming from the president, that's usually done on their own. It does not come back to the commission for approval.
And we're not going to
Because if we
ask.
have a motion to,
We're
right,
not
and if
going
we
to
have a
ask
motion
for
to
a motion
approve
on
it.
this.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah, this letter's going out, and Jim's letter is going out on his own. So, unless
Which
someone
is-
had
which is-
any violent opposition to the letter under my signature, nothing was going to change. Steve?
No, I would support yours.
Mr. President, Commissioners, to the extent that there's any concern over open meeting violation, I think that's what Commissioner May was alluding to. I'll communicate directly with Commissioner Hanson if there is any concern.
Thank you very much. Well, then as far as I'm concerned, that ends this particular agenda item. Steve, is that appropriate? Thank you very much. We'll go now into the public communications portion of our agenda. Stacy, is there anyone who'd like to speak to us this week?
Yes, Jared?
Who was that?
Jared Austin?
Oh, okay. Yes, love to hear from you.
Hello. Yeah.
Jared, you have 20 minutes. Just kidding.
Oh, 20 minutes. My name is Jared Austin. I live at 4211 West Fairmont Street. I just want to say thank you to the Commission for putting the Maple Grove item on hold. And I appreciate the consideration given towards the desires of the city and just the ongoing thought for keeping good relationships throughout our valley. And I just want to encourage you in your efforts going forward to just consider the benefits to and liabilities to taxpayers and safety for all road users. So thank you very much for putting this item on hold. I appreciate it.
You're welcome, Jared. Our pleasure. Is there anyone else, Stacy, who'd like to say something today?
Yes, Lisa Brady.
Lisa, welcome.
Thank you very much, President Goldthorpe and Commission. Lisa Brady, 1506 North 12th Street, Boise, Idaho, and current leader of the, I don't know, bunch of biking and walking things, right? You all know me pretty well. But I'm speaking from my Safe Routes to School position today because of the Maple Grove project. And I also want to echo Jared's comments about thanking you for giving this a second look. I have been working with the Maple Grove Elementary School and students for as long as I've been with Safe Routes, which is almost 8 years. And there is no time that we haven't had a very serious conversation about kids crossing at Victory and Maple Grove, and also accessing the park, which is Molinaro Park, the brand new park, almost brand new park, right across the street from the school. We've had a lot of challenges in getting kids there safely. Just even crossing the street for the bike rodeos, which we have a bike rodeo coming up on May 5th. If you'd like to come and take a look at the actual crossing and see what we're doing with small kids. These are 3rd and 4th grade students that would like to walk or bike to school, but a lot of times can't. And the road designs, as you know, if you've sat in on the Bicycle Advisory Committee meetings, we talk about the 5-lane standard design and how much we need to change that to keep people active and able to use different forms of transportation when they don't have anything else available. This is also an area where it's near West Junior High and Frank Church High School. I remain concerned about those people's movements and ability to do things outside of a car, or when safety busing access is taken away. Right now, safety busing is happening because of the construction zone, but that will go away again. It's under consideration. So that's my 200 cents this day from my Safe Routes chair. I have that great privilege of representing kids, and I hope that if you have any questions or want any input from me on this, I would really be glad to help. Thank you so much.
Thank you. One little tidbit from me, and that's because I've been here for about 45 years and drive that area a lot. Don't know why, because I live on Black Cat, but I seem to be in that area quite a bit. I have worried for years and years about that elementary school sitting there in that intersection with the amount of traffic and the amount of impatient drivers that I've witnessed over the years. And I will tell you that the most important thing to me right now as we complete this project there with the intersection is that we don't let any stone go unturned as far as the safety for these kids. Safety busing aside, my goal is to see the mothers so happy with our projects that they don't feel like they have to drive their kids to school anymore. And so you've heard me say that before, and I'll say it again. And that's what I believe is of utmost importance as we go along with this next mile on Maple Grove. Thank you,
Mr. President,
Lisa.
Mr.
Yes.
President, may I ask Lisa a question?
You betcha.
First, I've got to just give her such kudos for the BAC. It is so impressive to come to those meetings and the discussions and the way everything's broken up, and you've got your subcommittees and they come back with everything all prioritized. It was really impressive. So you all do such a nice job. I received your communication on the Eagle Elementary. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is that a magnet school still?
It is a magnet school, and it does draw students from the immediate neighborhood. So I did an informal poll in the classroom yesterday, and I will be doing that same thing again tomorrow. I have a secondary class, and we have about, I'd say, 10 kids that raise their hand that they could actually walk or bike to school. They're close enough to the school. They may come visit the playground at certain different times, but they are not allowed. And the overarching theme was my parents are too worried about traffic. Okay. So it's a really complicated situation, and I recognize that it's a complicated road as I sat through that light at Eagle and Albertsons 3 times before I was able to get to State Street. So I know
spend a lot of time there too.
Yeah,
but I wasn't sure if the classification had changed, so I knew you would have the
right.
The
it hasn't.
So.
Okay. Still, kids do live close. So
okay. Thank you. Thanks for all you do.
You bet.
Awesome. Thank you. Anything else? Stacy,
We have
anyone
one
else?
more. Yes, Mr. Mooney.
Mr. Mooney, all right, I recognize that name too. Welcome.
Thank you, President Goldthorpe, Commissioners. John Mooney, 7153 East Highland Valley Road. I also want to express my thanks to the Commission for the reattack on Maple Grove, and basically the challenge of the 5-lane to 3-lane issues. And in particular, I also serve as a neighborhood association president, and as you are aware, many of you on the previous commission approved our neighborhood's request to modify Warm Springs Avenue in the Barber Valley from a 5-lane right-of-way, preserving the right-of-way, but building out to 3 lanes for all the reasons you discussed last week on Maple Grove. And I want to commend your thoughts on that. And also I appreciate, and all of us appreciate, that operate motor vehicles, your challenge and the design challenge of your engineers to move vehicle traffic, but then balance it with other forms of transportation. And we dealt with that in our neighborhood out here in the Barber Valley, and got a lot of input from our neighbors, and I'm sure that's exactly what's going on in the southwest there in the residential area of Maple Grove. Thank you.
Thanks, John. I'll clue you in on something that I've been doing since all this broke in the last week, and that's I've been going over the 5-year integrated work plan, looking for any precedents for doing what was suggested might be a possibility last week. And the first and biggest one was right in my backyard on 10 Mile between the Overland and Victory, which is like a parking lot quite a bit of the time, morning and afternoon, and still remains a 3-lane projection for next year. So anyway, I think you may or may not be happy to know there is precedent for what we're considering. So anyone else, Stacy?
Yes, Marissa would like to say something.
Yes, welcome.
Hello, Commissioners. I just thought I better hop on and get on board here since it's in my neighborhood that we're discussing. I'd just like to thank you for sending the email to the city of Boise. I have more to say, but I think I'll save that for an email and send it to you. But once again, we do appreciate ACHD looking into this, because I know that plans have been in the works for a long time to do the 5 lanes on all of the arterials out here. And, looking now to maybe doing something different is exciting. So thank you.
All right. Stacy, anyone else?
That is it.
Gee whiz, I was getting used to a whole line of people saying thank you. Guess not. Okay, well, with that in mind, we'll adjourn the meeting then. Thank you all for your attendance. And we'll take 5 minutes and then begin our work sessions.
lost you, but yes, you can go ahead and share anytime.
All right, sorry about that. I got bumped.
Very good.
Thank you. All right, we're back. And so we will begin, well, by me taking off my mask so you can hear me. Our work sessions, the first one is from Ccdc with regards to the State Street and Old Boise block of Grove Street urban renewal districts. And so we have beautiful pictures up here on the Zoom meeting, and somebody's going to illustrate, I am sure. I just don't know who. Matt.
Good afternoon. Afternoon, President Goldthorpe and Commissioners. Matt Edmond, Director of Parking Mobility at CCDC 121 North 9th Street. I'll be talking about State Street, and then my colleague Carl Woods will be talking about the old Boise blocks. So first off, thank you for allowing me to come talk to you today about this. As I suspect many of you know, State Street's been studied for some 17 years now, and this URD study area effort kind of follows on the heels of those. State Street is the only corridor between, north of the Boise River, between downtown Boise and points west. And back in the early aughts, ACHD and the city of Boise, along with a number of Treasure Valley public agencies, determined it couldn't be feasibly widened to accommodate all the traffic that it would see under standard single occupant vehicle demand. And so there's been a concerted effort to increase alternative mode shares on the street to ensure that it retains capacity and an acceptable level of service. So here are some of the planning efforts. I believe the Highway District's been involved in every single one of them, if not leading them. And in recent years, this planning has given way to a number of projects. Downtown, the Main Street Station was built in 2016 as the downtown terminus of any transit routing on State Street, and then ACHD itself has done a number of intersection projects in recent years, including State and DMP, State and Collister, and I believe you guys are doing some preliminary design work on the Pierce Park and Glenwood intersections. So this is what the State Street study area looks like. Spans about 6 miles from 27th Street to Horseshoe Bend. If you're curious about why it's only on the north side of the road, from roughly the Lake Harbor area, that's because the south side is Garden City, so this is totally in Boise city limits. It's about 575 acres, including right-of-way, and comprises 630-ish parcels. The circles there depict, the dash circles, both red and yellow, depict transit nodes that have been contemplated in the planning efforts that I discussed earlier. So project objectives.
Excuse me.
Bottom line.
Matt.
You got a question?
Hi, Matt. Do you mind repeating the circles again that you said? I couldn't really hear you. Could you go back one slide?
Sure. So the circles, the red circles were included. Those were the nodes, the transit nodes, for which concepts were drawn up in the State Street Corridor TOD plan. And that was completed in 2009. The city of Boise adopted it into their comp plan, or not 2009, 2019. The city adopted it in their comp plan last year in 2020. The yellow nodes, those were not drawn up as concepts in the TOD plan, but they were contemplated in previous planning efforts. So
Thank you.
We've got starting in the west, Horseshoe Bend, Bogart Lane, Glenwood Gary Lane, Pierce Park, Collister, 36 Veterans, and then Whitewater Park. So project objectives, the intent of an urban renewal district along State Street would be to help implement the vision of planning efforts up to this point to redevelop State Street as a mixed-use, transit-oriented corridor, which will in turn hopefully drive down single-occupant vehicle mode share and travel demand in relation to growth. Obviously, it will go up, but hopefully slower than growth. So as part of our urban renewal planning effort, we commissioned SB Friedman to conduct a market assessment for the State Street study area. They determined that there's sufficient demand in the study area that with urban renewal assistance, we would see this level of development in the next 20 years over the term of a 20-year urban renewal district. So roughly 4,000 new residential units, either single family or multifamily attached, 50,000 square feet of office, and 362,000 square feet of retail, possibly a hotel. So the role of CCDC in this. As Boise's urban renewal agency, CCDC employs 5 strategies to foster development. Could be either through our own projects, through partnerships with other public agencies like ACHD, or public-private partnerships. So these strategies, infrastructure, mobility, those are probably the 2 most germane to the highway district, but also economic development, placemaking, and special projects. So first off, I want to, on these strategies, I want to touch on infrastructure. The biggest one with regard to the highway district would be new streets, either perpendicular to or parallel to State Street. We seek to build these in coordination with development and approval of ACHD. And the hope would be these streets improve access and circulation, create low-stress routes for walking and biking, and allow for improved access management on State Street. There's a high-volume, high-speed corridor. You know, the fewer direct access points, the better. Next, with regard to infrastructure utilities. So these are some of the things we've been involved in. On the left here, you can see Silva cells. That's a type of green stormwater infrastructure. Trees, it helps for healthy tree root growth, but it also can be used for stormwater capture and treatment. We have them in a number of our streetscapes downtown. And then on the right, Conduit Banks. We've started doing this in concert with the city of Boise. And if we can get spare conduit down major corridors, when a new telecom comes in, rather than digging up a new trench, cutting into pavement that's possibly fairly new, the city, which has a master license agreement in place with ACHD, can just license that telecom to go into existing conduit. So it reduces the need for pavement cuts and also hopefully improves broadband internet access and cost. So the second strategy I wanted to touch base with you on is mobility. So first and foremost on State Street would be transit infrastructure. While ICHD has jurisdiction over State Street, we look to assist in implementing things like this. So we've got the rendering of a possible transit station on State Street. This is per the 2019 TOD plan. And these are not your everyday bus stops. So they include shelter, seating, real-time route information, and also off-board fare payment and collection. And on the right, just to illustrate some things we've done in the past with transit, in case anyone doesn't recognize this, this is the entry to Main Street Station in downtown. We did provide the local match for that. It was a federal grant. Next, with regard to mobility, so walking and biking. We looked at, again, this is, in the spirit of the State Street efforts to date to promote alternative modes of transportation. So it could be protected bike lanes like we've done downtown. More likely it would be something like multi-use pathways like the Pioneer Pathway here at the center. Potentially even secure bike parking like you see with the Bike Boy Station on the right. And lastly, near and dear to my heart, parking. May or may not include one or more parking structures along the corridor, depending on what we determine with our consultants. And I'll touch on the last three strategies real quick. So economic development, we generally pursue cultivating commerce and growing resilient, diversified local economies. Generally try to include components of affordable and mixed-use housing with these. And we can often foster development of properties that would not otherwise redevelop due to odd geometries, site contamination, or other challenges. You can see the Ash Street townhomes here on the left. That was a fairly odd-shaped parcel, and then the water cooler at 14th and Idaho, along with Ccdc restaurant on the right there. Next is placemaking. On the left here, you can see our West Side Urban Park, which is currently under construction. We expect that to open this summer. And on the right, the Fountain Grove Plaza, I suspect most of you are familiar with. In early neighborhood outreach and online surveys, we've already gotten a fair amount of interest in new public spaces along State Street. And lastly, special projects. These can be a number of things. We look to respond to emerging revitalization opportunities, including historic preservation, support of local arts and culture. On the left here, you can see the Irma Hayman House. We acquired this as part of the Ash Street properties, and we were able to transfer it to the city of Boise as for preservation with the Ash Street Townhome project. And then a number of public art components, many of which my colleague Carl here takes lead on. Iconic pieces like this Boise City Canal sculpture pictured in the center, and then traffic box art wraps, which obviously is a close partnership with the Highway District. Ubiquitous throughout downtown and so popular that a number of neighborhoods have sought grants to put them in on their own traffic boxes. Or I should say ACHD's traffic boxes in their neighborhoods. So existing urban renewal districts or CCDC districts, I just want to touch on these real quick. So we currently have 5 that are active. Central District hit sunset a few years back. I would point out River Myrtle and West Side downtown. Those are both set to sunset in the next 5 years in 2025 and 2026 respectively. So process and next steps. This is what we've done to date and next steps. We're currently developing frameworks and public improvement lists and cost estimates to go with those lists for a draft quarter framework. Once we have a project list firmed up, including transportation elements, we'll look to reach out to ACHD staff to discuss a possible interagency agreement. In May and June, we'll seek input on the draft quarter framework. We also hope to have the fundamentals of any interagency agreement established, including that with ACHD. And then we plan to take this to the CCDC board currently at the July board meeting. Should they elect to approve it, we'll then transmit it to the taxing districts, including a separate transmittal to ACHD for comment. If all goes according to the schedule, the urban renewal plan would likely go before City Council to consider at a public hearing in October.
Lastly, I'd like to plug, we have survey number 2. It just came out on Monday. It will be open until April 5th. There's a direct link to it at ccdcstatestreet.com. And that concludes my presentation. I'll stand for any questions or comments you may have.
Yes, Matt, I do have a couple of questions, maybe just one. In light of all of the commitments that ACHD has made for projects along State Street, what, if any, are the ramifications of an urban renewal district coming into play there in terms of our increment and also grant monies and the possibility, heaven forbid, of having to federalize those projects?
President Goldthorpe, that's a great question. So our argument would be that the development we expect to see on State Street, while there be some in the absence of an urban renewal district, we don't think there would be as much. It's not economically feasible. One of the things that came out with the TOD plan in 2019, within consulting group, did a feasibility analysis of redevelopment along the corridor. And a lot of the properties there that we forecast, that 4,000 new residential and 50,000 of office, it just didn't pencil based on the cost of the land and new construction and all, when, versus building greenfield. So certainly you'll see some development out there. I don't think you would see what I showed you on my slide for the forecast demand in the absence of urban renewal. Also, I like to think we provide a carrot that 20 years from now gets us a better product than without it. Where a property comes in, if it only fronts State Street, my understanding is the highway district generally has to grant access if they want to develop something. We can work with them, provide some incentives to get, consolidated access, new public streets, to get a better product 20 years down the road than we might see piecemeal through something like this. As far as federal aid, I don't think it impacts applying for federal aid, and there's nothing about this that would impinge on ACHD's jurisdiction for that kind of stuff. If anything, like with Main Street Station, I would think that we can use that tax increment to provide the local match for a federal aid project.
Okay, we've had some discussion about certain types of aid that would require us to turn over these projects to the federal government for their approvals and processes and everything else. And at one particular point in time in the past, we decided against that. So for some good reasons. And so I was just hoping we weren't going, down a rabbit hole here that might require us to do something different. But I appreciate the presentation because, as I've said before many times, that's one of the more important things for us to see in this county right now is for a good transit corridor to develop there in State Street so that there's virtually no reason that it wouldn't succeed. Thank you.
Mr. President?
Yes.
Hi, Matt. Thank you for your presentation. I just have another comment. I just want to say thank you for this work. Thank you for this well thought out presentation. And just to echo Commissioner Goldthorpe's thoughts, I really want to just do all that we can to make this the corridor that it needs to be. And because it's very dangerous, it's not efficient. There's a lot of opportunity to make that a crown jewel of our county. So again, looking forward to further communications and subsequent presentations. Thank you.
Jim, Mary, Dave, any questions or comments?
Yeah, Mr. President. Matt, thanks. As you know, this is to me, this is the #1 priority. All the infrastructure public services, they're available along that corridor, and to incentivize investment will benefit tremendously, just because of the configuration of the river there and the foothills. That corridor, it really presents an opportunity to do it and do it right. So I certainly pledge as much cooperation as possible to do it right. Because if those homes and business units that could be invested along that corridor are pushed out into areas where there are no services right now, it adds to the burden on the taxpayers that we don't have. So we don't have the capacity for right now. So this is really a good, we're going in the right direction, and I'm sure everyone wants to cooperate to make it the best possible.
Thank you. If there are no other questions or comments.
I just want to say thanks, Matt. Thanks for presenting today. This is an exciting project. Look forward to more updates as it continues to evolve. Grew up here, live out in the west end of the valley, so I'm on State Street all the time, and looking forward to seeing what you come back with. So thank you for taking the time to address us today. Appreciate it, and look forward to working with you.
Thank you, Commissioners.
I just have one more thing really quick. Matt, I'm sure you know this, and you're going to create, all of these facilities are going to be ADA compliant, but there are a lot of pockets of residents that live along State Street that are visually impaired or blind or have, are deaf. So a lot of folks use transit along that corridor just for that reason, because it does exist. So whatever pieces and elements that you can glean from other communities and states that have done a really good job making it even more accessible for those folks to get where they need to go, I think that would be a really important element to incorporate if that fits.
All right. Then thank you, Matt, for sure. I understand now we're going to have a presentation on the old Boise blocks of Grove Street, which is a pretty hopping place.
It is. Debbie, can you share your screen?
All right. There he is.
Hi there.
Hi. Hold on one second. I'm going to share my screen. One second here.
Kent, how old is that on air? I'm just curious. Do you know?
I was fiddling around with Zoom the other day and decided that I'd have to go back to college before I learned how to use it very well. In other words, ACHD will never allow me to do a presentation using Zoom.
Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, great.
All right. Well, good afternoon, President Goldthorpe and Commissioners. I'm Carl Woods, Project Manager at Ccdc, and I'm here along with Debbie Chow with ZGF Architects and Kim Siegenthaler with Jensen Belts Associates, two landscape architects working on our team. And so we're here today to briefly discuss bicycle facilities on the old Boise blocks on Grove Street. This
area is composed of the area between Main Street and Front Street, Capitol Boulevard, and 3rd. And last year, CCDC engaged the community for assistance in developing a vision for the area. Agnew Beck prepared a visioning report last fall that documented that input. And the final vision report is the product of the process to build a vision that was supported by both the public and the private stakeholders. And this included developers, property owners, and public agencies. Next slide, Debbie. Perfect. The vision report identifies ideas for the entire area and contemplates other projects, real estate actions that the agency is also working on to support redevelopment. The graphic before you shows the study area, some of the ideas and board-approved CIP projects within the area. Some of them have been completed, like the Block 7 Alley, 6th Street improvements. Some are in progress. Some of the housing that Clay Carley's group's working on, and some of which are forthcoming. We're glad to send this visioning report out for everyone to look in more detail if you'd like, or it's also located on our website. Next slide, Debbie. Awesome. Okay, so we're here to discuss one specific project that the vision report identified as a priority for public space and infrastructure investment, and that priority is the streetscape improvements on Grove from 3rd to 6th Street. This project helps accomplish the community's vision for the area by creating a distinctive shared street that will help celebrate the historic culture of the area, focus on multimodal transportation, explore sustainable strategies, and provide a venue for community events. The project also takes into account interfacing with the multi-use pathway that would connect 3rd Street to Broadway, as well as a couple other ideas contained within the vision report and CCDC CIP. Other components of the project are utility infrastructure upgrades, green and stormwater infrastructure, inclusion of public art, and a distinctive Boise City Canal design feature. ACHD staff part of the stakeholder group, and CCDC will be re-engaging the stakeholder group at the end of March. Today, we're wanting to discuss what are the appropriate options for bicycle facilities so that we're communicating those options appropriately as we re-engage the stakeholder group and the public. And Debbie, I'll let you go ahead and hop into the bicycle facilities.
Great. Good afternoon, commissioners. I wanted to thank you the opportunity today to talk about Grove Street between 3rd and 6th Street. And I wanted to show you a couple slides that shows us what there is today and confirm some of our assumptions and how we move forward to design Grove Street between 3rd and 6th, and what's the role for Grove Street. And before you, this is the bike map, today's bike map from ACHD's website. And what it shows is Grove Street is right in the middle. We have some purple bike lanes showing on 3rd Street right now, and also as well as on 8th Street. But there are no other current bike facilities in this area today. We also want to start looking at the relationship between cars and bikes and people. And this is Grove Street right here. This is the same graphic Carl was showing earlier. So we have some one-ways and some two-ways traffic. And we wanted to highlight these movements so that we have a better understanding. So Capitol Boulevard is basically northbound, and so is 6th Avenue, and 5th Avenue, and 5th Street, and then 6th Street is a southbound movement, and Grove Street is two-way, and so is 4th and 3rd as well. So we just wanted to confirm that. Next. So this graphic in front of you is it was a 2018 addendum, the Roadway to Bikeways plan. And I apologize, it's a little blurry, but it's zoomed in pretty close. But what we wanted to show you here is the purple line right here. Right here is Grove Street. This is 3rd Street. And then this is the two magenta lines right here are Front and Myrtle. So just to orient you, and then right here is where Grove Plaza is. So what we're really looking at is this purple line right here. So what on this plan says is a level 2 bike lane, through Grove Street. And we really wanted to confirm with you, is this the definition that we want to carry on with the design of or revisioning of what Grove Street is. And so we have some level 1 share street, on 3rd, and connecting to another bike lane, actually another, let's see, so 6, actually this is Capitol. Right here is a protected bike facility here. So there are multiple things going on here, but we understand that, the vision is to have bike connections. So this map right here is the regional traffic from one of the websites. And so we wanted to highlight the average daily trips currently on Grove Street, and also daily trips on Broad Street, another street that we have worked with on CCDC on a couple years back. And so if you look at some of the numbers here, this is Front and this is 3rd. These are much higher volume streets. And we wanted to just highlight, okay, so if we have a low volume street, does it really need an actual separate bike lane, for Grove Street? I mean, and that's a question, for all of us to consider, as we look at some of the current data. Okay, so now we're gonna look at a street cross section. So now looking back at this map, up at the upper right-hand corner here. So we're cutting a street section right between 5th and 6th on Grove. And so if you imagine, this is the new development Mr. Carley is developing, and then this is a current parking lot. So we are imagining that, what if Grove Street is a level 1 Sharrow or share street, what it may start to look like. So what we wanted to show is, a share street generally it could be an 11-foot to a 14-foot travel lane where bikes and cars share mutually. And then we have a parking, perhaps a parking furnishing lane, and then we have sidewalk area. So it could range from 18 to 21 feet. So all of these sections is going to show a 80-foot right-of-way, which is what Grove Street currently has for right-of-way, a public right-of-way dimension. And these two lines right here is showing the relationship of where the street tree is and what kind of outdoor room it starts to create. And so we also look at, what if we put in the bike lane as it's currently assigned, as a bike lane for Grove Street, so we have an 11-foot, we have a 6-foot bike lane, parking, and sidewalk space. So we have a 15-foot sidewalk on either side. And so what we really are trying to do is, how do we balance this, mode, from car to bike and people, how do we balance it so that we put more emphasis on pedestrian and bicycle, but, and there could be some sharing going on. And then this version is, what if, if there is a bike lane, then can we actually put it adjacent to the sidewalk area and where the pedestrian and the bike can share that space? Of course, people actually stick to their direction and, where they're supposed to go. So that's one way of looking at a bike lane on Grove Street. And then we went ahead and did a level 3 protected bike facility for Grove Street and what it may start to look like. And so what this tells us is, you know, if we still put the travel lanes in the middle, we have parking on one side or both sides. When we have a two-way cycle track, what starts to happen is we have these modes, you know, having their own space. But what starts to sacrifice a bit here is where the sidewalk, you know, widths are, you know, so we have 11-foot sidewalk here, and on the north side of the street where it's going to be more sunny, we have a 20-foot sidewalk. And so these are some of the things that we wanted to just show you. We started looking at the rationale of, like, how do we share the street and how do we separate the modes, or do we separate the modes at all? And because part of the vision for this street is to have lots of activities, whether it's everyday daytime activities or special events, and how can we actually design it so that it can accommodate that level of event space. And of course, looking at the first block, actually is this block right here, where the Bass block currently reside. This is a one-way street, and we wanted to capture the current condition at the sidewalk level, but also, you know, on the north side, but also on the south side, but understand how Grove Street from 3rd to 6th will connect with the Bass block, and then come to the Grove Plaza. If you keep heading towards the Grove Plaza. Do you have any questions?
Yes, I have one. Is Grove Street a collector or arterial? Just as a pop quiz. I'm curious because I see, all I see is slow traffic on Grove. And so I think there's ways with traffic calming and other things to make Sharrows work really well if you wanted to go that way. I think it's a lovely area, and you're going to be able to definitely make it more of a place-making project than it even is now. So I'm interested in seeing how this moves forward.
Jack, do you want to? Okay, go ahead.
Debbie, so you showed us on one end the Basque block. Can you show me again what Grove connects to on the other side, going east? And what those facilities look like?
So Grove Street on 6th, and right here is the Grove Plaza, Bass. So between 5th and 6th, between 4th and 5th, and 3rd and 4th. This is where the Department of Labor building is located. This is the Department of Labor Annex. There is a canal easement located right here. And Carl, do you speak a bit on this piece of easement?
So, but that's going north and south on the furthest east is 3rd Street, is that correct?
Yes, this is 3rd Street.
And 3rd, because I know they have great bulb outs and a few other pieces. Do they have a Sharrow, or do they have other bike facilities?
Currently, there looks like there is a Sharrow from Google Maps that I can tell. But in the long run, from this ACHD addendum, it looks like north of Main Street on 3rd, this will remain as a Sharrow on 3rd, and then south of Main, it's going to be a bike lane facility. And I mean, this is part of the reason why we wanted to come here and speak with you, is to confirm that between 2008 and now 2021, 18, sorry, have any plan, I'm like traveling back in time, has any plan changed, or like are the thoughts still the same? And and I want to show you a couple more, probably this is more brainy and more nerdy analysis here. Is we did a pretty in-depth analysis on the three types. So there's the level 1 shared street, and then there's the level 2 bike lanes, and then there's the level 3 two-way cycle track. So what we did is this 80-foot, we slice and dice many different configurations. And here's the center line of the street. So the first one here is what we saw. If we have an 11-foot lane, we have parking on either side. We have a 6-foot tree planting zone, and we'll have a 15-foot sidewalk. And every single one of them, you can see we have a consistency of where the canal is located. And that's one of the special feature that we have, and we've heard from the community that is something that they want to highlight as well as the history component, for Grove Street. And so what we did here is we flush out, all the possible scenario. And what we really want to get to is not a 9-foot sidewalk, but it's a much wider sidewalk space. But where areas where we can share the modes, we would. And so we wanted to come here to discuss this with you, and what is the most appropriate, way of sharing modes, and what's acceptable, for ACHD, for the future of, this segment of Grove Street between 3rd and 6th, and connecting to the Bass Walk, and also to the Grove Plaza.
So Debbie, are you saying, can you go back one slide? A clarifying question. So are you saying that what's highlighted in red here, those two options, that's what the community outreach has said that that's what they would prefer? Is that what you're saying?
No. The community outreach, the vision is to have a shared, the community wanted a street for pedestrians and for bikes. Carl, you may have to help me paraphrase this and interpret this. We heard loud and clear that, this is a street for people. And we know in Boise, there are some festival streets, but I think more and more we understand, the outdoor public streets have a lot of responsibility, not just as special events, but for just everyday, living. Carl, do you have something to?
Carl, before you respond, I'm getting a little bit confused. If you're here today to ask us for direction, we have people for that. The commission doesn't give direction for designs and stuff from the dais and work sessions. We just don't. We're not qualified, and a number of other reasons. If you'd like this street to look like 8th Street, then that's probably, after the designs are done and reasoning done and the city's behind it and CCDC, then you should probably come to us then. But otherwise, this is all looking really great, but we're not professionals. Is that about right, Justin?
Commissioner Goldthorpe, members of the commission, thank you. Justin Lucas, I'm the Deputy Director of Planning and Project Management here at the Highway District, just for the record. I think you hit it right on the head, Commissioner Goldthorpe. We're glad to coordinate with CCDC on the options for this street. It is a local roadway. I think there's all kinds of options that can and should be considered, and typically, historically, on this type of roadway in a downtown setting, the Commission has worked with the Land Use Agency or the Urban Renewal Agency to find the best fit for the community. So I think looking at all these options today, there's lots of interest. ACHD's plans haven't changed, but if the question is, is CCDC required to build a bike lane because our map says that, the short answer is no. We are willing to look at all options as long as bicyclists and pedestrians are adequately accommodated on the corridor. So I think we're glad to do that, and at your direction, Commission, we'll continue to work with CCDC. Thank you.
Thanks, Justin. I hope that helps you.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, Mr. President?
Yes.
Yeah, so I want to echo what Justin said. We'll work closely with the CCDC. I cycle this area all the time. I think you're right. It's a shared street. It's a very low volume street. I want to make I'm sure the Sharrows is going to work fine. 11-foot lanes, that's going to work fine. Looks like that's the direction you're going. What I want to emphasize is encourage, and I know it's probably outside of CCDC's zone. I'm not too sure, but Commissioner Pickering was getting at that. I think it's real critical that connection be made over to Broadway sooner rather than later. ACHD and the city did a great job investing a lot in connecting a mid-block crossing on Broadway. It's finished, it's being used, but folks coming from the east trying to get into downtown then have to go up on the main or down on the front to get there. So I would hope that connection to Broadway can be done at the same time. And I know there's a lot of moving parts. There's that canal, there's utilities, there's all kinds of other things, but don't put that off, because I think the functionality of it will be defeated if we don't have a connection to Grove. So I'm going to put that pitch in there for doing that. And then the facility we've already invested in Broadway will then be used even more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks, Commissioner. That was something that we worked with the Boise Canal Company, the county, and Idaho Power during the visioning process on. It was very well received, and at this point it's in CCDC's CIP, I think, for it's either 22 or 23. So the idea is to get it built roughly the same time as the streetscape improvements.
Awesome. Is that it?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, thank you so much for your time, and we'll work.
Well, we appreciate you being here. I really like watching that area develop myself. Thank you. Now we have Jennifer, you're on for discussion about our future maintenance and traffic operations facilities. And I'll say right now, because I don't know how long this is going to go, I'll be turning the end of this over to Commissioner McKinney, because I had an engagement at about 2 o'clock that was rather important that I couldn't get away with moving.
Commissioner Paul Daigle, Chief of Staff, the director has been called away to the legislature, so he asked me to introduce this. Just to remind the commission that this is for information only. Jennifer will start off with the Ustic facility, and she'll let us know what the phasing plan is, and that'll be followed by Gary Inselman, who will talk about the new traffic management center. Similar approach, a phasing plan. We're going to give you an estimate on what we think it's going to cost spread out over X number of years. So, like I said, for information only, the first of many briefings that the commission will get on this process. So, Jennifer, without further ado, I will turn it over to you.
Outstanding. Thank you so much, Paul. Mr. President, Commissioners, for the record, Jennifer Behringer. I'm the Deputy Director of Maintenance. Today I'm honored to be in front of you to discuss the Ustic maintenance site. Oh, wait, it's not shared yet. That looks better. So I'll just begin through the overview with a quick site history. Then I'll show you a couple of slides that give you the conceptual site plan and an overview of the phasing strategy. I'm going to go through each of those phasing steps in individual slides, and then talk very briefly about what we have coming up for this phasing year. So to start things off, Just a little history. ACHD Commission gave consent to procure the land for an additional maintenance site back in December of 2019 due to the ever-increasing population of Ada County. And this was a 23.7 acre parcel at this property, 3764 West Ustic in Meridian, and the acquisition of the property took place in January of 2020. This map shows the Ustic maintenance site location. The property is this area right here in blue. As you can see, it is north of Ustic, on the north side of Ustic, and west of 10 Mile. Just above us, just to the north of us, you can see the wastewater treatment plant. So the land that we acquired is vacant farm ground, so it's essentially a blank canvas for us to use. And in the bottom, in the southeast corner here, there's a house on that facility. And as we're doing the site prep and building up the site, that will act as our temporary admin building.
Jennifer?
Yes, ma'am.
What is it, the City of Meridian's wastewater treatment plant facility? Is that what that is? Okay.
Yes.
It's Meridian? Okay, thank you.
By the way, there are trout in the creek at the north side of our property.
Sweet. Love that. So this is just an overview slide to show the conceptual site plan. This will be our proposed end state. I'm showing it to you all in one image here, and then as I said, I'll step through it in the next several slides. We phased it out. The colors represent each year of the development with kind of a goal in mind for each of those years. The site plan will be resubmitted, or this site plan is going to be submitted to the City of Meridian to start the rezoning and annexation process. There's a lot of information on this slide, and I'll let you kind of look at it for a minute, but again, I'll be going through each of these details over the next several slides. This is our overview of the phasing strategy to show what we're going to be doing in each of the next 8 years. We've attempted to spread it out so that the people that we bring on and the equipment that we bring on are phased out with some specific operational goals in mind. The idea is to build out the site over some time, and right now our concept is to build it out over 8 years and bring the people and personnel on throughout that process. So the first phase is where we are right now, FY21. Goal on this phase is obviously annexation into the City of Meridian and rezoning for our uses. It's currently residential. We're in this part of the phase right now. Once that annexation and rezoning occurs, depending where we end up this year, right now the plan is that we get all that accomplished by this summer, then we can start rolling into connecting to city services and start the process of design, bring on an architectural firm, et cetera, to start building this out based on our concept. I do want to take a moment on this slide. The very first goal that we had in this phase was to bring on our superintendent of the Ustic Yard, so I'd like to formally introduce to you Heather Tillett, who's here. She is the superintendent of the yard. She's been instrumental in putting all of this information together. She's been doing a lot of research on decant facilities, what it's going to take to rezone. She's been working with our planner. So a lot of work since we brought her on in October, and her job is only just beginning. So phase 2, this is when we're going to do the bulk of the site prep. So the areas on the map that you see highlighted in gray, primarily there's a road right now that connects to Ustic, that's Naomi Road. It's a private lane right now, so we'll be moving that lane over to realign with the south portion of Naomi, widening it out a little bit, and then building kind of that site access, that site road throughout the site. Throwing in a little bit of temporary parking at the house. As I mentioned, that's where the admin building is going to be, temporary operation until we build up in the final step of a new admin building. I do want to make note on this slide, just the cost of equipment and everything. As we've been phasing all the equipment out, we're looking at the equipment we have now, equipment that would ordinarily be going to auction this year, holding some of that stuff back a little bit longer so that we can phase out over the time keep equipment a little bit longer so that we're not seeing such a big press of new equipment as we're bringing on these new operations. So we're really trying to balance that out to best use the taxpayer money. Also in this phase, I did want to point out on the north end of the property, there will be a pathway put in. This is in concert with City of Meridian. They're developing this 5-mile walking path. They want to do a cost sharing. They're proposing a cost sharing where we'll take some of the burden of building that lane, and then they'll take over the maintenance over time. So it's a good partnership that we have with them, and the timing aligns pretty well as they want to begin their construction in 2022.
Jennifer, one thing I'll make the commission aware of, when I was on Meridian's Parks and Rec Commission, it became very apparent, and I was very grateful for this, that anytime property was developed, that was the way that the City of Meridian preferred to do pathways. And just, this is our good neighbor policy here. When we completed years of surveys and focus groups and public meetings, it was determined that by a huge majority, the very first and foremost priority for the citizens of Meridian, what they wanted to see more of than anything else, was pathways. So this is a good thing.
Yeah. And as I said, the timing is good, so as we're building that up and putting up our fence line, we'll put the fence to the south of the pathway so that they'll have that access, a green belt of sorts for Meridian. The third phase is, the biggest cost in this phase is going to be constructing the Decant facility. So as far as site prep goes, that's pretty much all we're going to be able to do in this year. Starting with the previous phase and rolling into this phase, the focus for personnel and equipment is going to be on bringing in that third chip seal team. So we've kind of spread that out over 2 years for bringing in the chip seal team for the personnel and the equipment. And then the site phasing, once we get the roads and everything built, then the attention will be on that Decant facility. So this year is a particularly large budget year because of the Decant. There isn't much else that we can do for site prep. In phase 4, this is when we're going to be constructing a good number of the facilities on the site. So the broom and the drainage sheds would be coming in, putting in the fuel islands and the mag chloride tanks, and covered material storage. During this phase for staff, we'll be starting to bring in a little bit more of the broom crew, tying up some of the grade crew, bringing in mechanics and an admin. And then the equipment, again, is just starting to fill out a little bit more. So a big year for sweepers in this year, bringing in more of the dump trucks and the associated winter ops equipment and the fog seal operations. In 2025, the site construction will focus on bringing the fleet buildings, so the mechanics will be able to operate out of this facility at that point. We'll tie up the rest of the broom crew, bring in 10 more crew members for the brooms, more sweepers, and other associated equipment as we fill out those crews. The 6th phase, so this is our admin building construction. So we'll bring in the visitor parking, build the admin building, pave the site. We start some design for some of the other future things also. For personnel, our big push on this year is the utility crew, so we'll be bringing in the bulk of the utility crew and another broom and their associated equipment. And the 7th phase, we bring in the truck wash, truck bays, truck scale. For personnel and staff, we'd be bringing on the drainage crew, filling out the broom crew again, and the vac trucks and a couple of sweepers. So vac trucks are, as you may recall, one of the more expensive pieces of equipment that we have. So bringing those trucks in, that's going to be a costly year for that as well. And then the final phase, phase 8. So this is when we're going to finish up the outlier projects. But more importantly, what I want to highlight on this slide, the parking that we have, the big employee parking and the fleet parking, tying that up, getting that paved. One of the things that we're going to try and achieve on this, and more plans will be coming to you as we start to flesh it out, is creating this site as a net zero green site as best we can. Use our resources wisely. For this parking area, we're proposing bringing in the covered solar panel parking. So being able to establish our own electricity as much as we can, try to minimize the impact on our environment and be net zero facility. There are a lot of examples of this already in Treasure Valley that we've been able to go out and talk to. So I think there's good opportunity there, and we'll obviously have to do the cost benefit analysis and see if that's the direction we want to go. Also in this phase, if we choose to remove the administrative or the house that's on the facility, since we have now the new admin building built, we could remove that facility and add the covered, additional covered storage in its place. For personnel, we'd be bringing on the vegetation crew, four members of the vegetation crew, and another broom, associated equipment for the vegetation crew, some bucket trucks, etc. So bottom line, this is the 8th phase, this is our last phase. Over the 8 years, when we're adding up all the additional costs, we're looking at somewhere in the range of $45 million for all of the site prep, personnel, and equipment. So we recognize that that's a sizable chunk of money. It is an impact. And as was alluded to earlier today, anytime we're going to be developing any new site, that's pretty close to a price tag that we'd be looking at for each of the slides. I kind of had the estimated total cost for site preparations, and you could probably use that to extrapolate if we had to do another site to move the Adams Yard. So coming up, we have requested the pre-application meeting with the City of Meridian, so we're waiting on a date certain for that. Hopefully by the end of March or first week of April, we'll have that meeting with the City of Meridian, and we're also in the works of planning that neighborhood meeting toward the end of the month. These are the kind of the rest of the steps. Bottom line, we're hoping to get all of the annexation and rezoning done this summer, July, and then we'll be able to press forward with actual design of the facilities and be able to cue in a little bit more on what our costs are going to look for each of the years. So with that, I'll stand for any questions.
I just have one comment. I'm pleased that we haven't had to do this with a closer and sooner timeline because of the percentage growth that Ada County has experienced since we set up the Cloverdale site. If someone were to say, hey, you're doing this too soon, I'd say, no, we're about 2.5 times the population since then, and we're only doing it once. So thank you very much.
Jennifer, I have a question.
Yes.
So with the pathway being on that north side of the property, if I'm reading that correctly, is there, obviously further down in the phases and then that last phase, I would also be really open to making that fence line just accommodating with, trees, and so it's not, a barbed wire fence, and it's, make it look really nice.
Yeah, and we'll have some plans for definitely along the frontage area, the landscaping. It'll look nice for the application with Meridian. On the back side, they've already mentioned that they need to be able to see through the fence line just for safety of the pedestrians on the pathway. And we will look to see what we can do for what's in our property line versus what they're going to be doing for the landscaping on that end.
And I love your diving into seeing how we can make the property more efficient and sustainable. I think that's really, really important. Thank you.
Thank you.
And the good news is the cost to do that's going down.
Okay, and Gary is here to talk about the Franklin site.
All right, President Goldthorpe, Commissioners, for the record, Gary Insulin, Deputy Director of Development Technical Services, to provide you an information briefing about the proposed Franklin Traffic Operations Yard. We call it Traffic Operations Yard, but it will house more than just that as proposed. Currently, the traffic operations crews consist of our signal construction crew, signal maintenance crew, our signal inspectors, paint crew, and sign crew. We would also propose to move congestion management out there, including our traffic management center, which is currently housed across the street in the traffic operations building. And it is important that they're located together as the signal maintenance crews do coordinate with our traffic operations engineers in their troubleshooting issues and utilize that traffic management center. And then finally, we also propose to move our construction laboratory out there. Our currently traffic operations occupies about 3 acres of the Adams Yard across the street, highlighted in yellow. And then down at the bottom, congestion management is located in the headquarters building, and our lab occupies a small portion of the old building. We last expanded that in the early 90s, and we have outgrown the space and need to update some.
Gary, can you explain what the construction laboratory is? Is that testing certain pavement or what, can you explain a little bit?
Yes, President Goldthorpe, Commissioner Pickering, that is exactly it. We sample the construction materials from our projects and test the gravel, the asphalt. They'll go out and do concrete tests. We bring back the samples and cure them and break them to make sure we've met strength. They do all of that for our development projects as well, so that we know that we're getting the product that we need before we accept those for maintenance.
Thank you.
Also wanted to note that, as I said, the Traffic Management Center is down here in the Traffic Operations Building. The Adams Yard site is in the floodplain. In 2017, when we had the last higher flows in the river, we actually surrounded that building with temporary barriers just in case they had to increase the flows. In a 100-year flood, that site is inundated. Adams Street is underwater, and actually our parking lot in front of the headquarters building here has water in it, and water is at the front door. So it is important that we look to have that site in a secure location, as it does help provide services during emergencies. The bottom left is the parcels that we acquired. It was about, Commission authorized us to enter into the sale and purchase agreement October 2019. We completed that sale a little over a year ago in January. And in the upper right is our Cloverdale maintenance yard. So we'll utilize our fleet services facilities there, mechanics and fueling stations, so we don't need to duplicate those facilities at the Franklin site. Zooming in a little bit, we actually bought 2 parcels side by side. They're separated down the middle by an access road to one of our existing stormwater basins at the northern end. And interestingly, the parcel on the left was in Meridian's impact area. The parcel on the right is in Boise's impact area. So last year during their comp plan amendment, the city of Meridian agreed to release that parcel and allow it to be annexed into the city of Boise. So we will be working through the city of Boise for annexation and rezone and development of the site.
Gary,
Yes,
go back to that previous slide. The parcel on the right, what is its current use?
Its current use is it's vacant. It was leased to a landscaping company. They've since relocated when we purchased the parcel.
Okay, and then the parcel on the left appears to have a home on it?
It did. We had that removed. It was not habitable.
Okay.
Mr. President, Gary?
Yes, Jim?
You'll probably get to this, that property to the north that borders on the railroad, would we have to provide access to that across the middle of our property?
Mr. President, Commissioner Hanson, no. The parcel to the north here is owned by ACHD. It's a stormwater basin. And the drain and the railroad, there will not be any public access to that area or crossing. So this is the proposed site plan. I'll zoom in a little bit, cutting off our stormwater basin so we can see it a little better. Along the left side is a collector roadway that is indicated on our master street map. So we would design and build that with the construction of our site. And it will connect to Lanark Street to the west in the future. It's about a parcel or two away from us currently. I believe the second parcel to the west is under development, and the parcel to the west of us is currently privately owned. So when that develops, they would connect that roadway, and we would have access out to Eagle Road going out through by R.C. Willey, or to the signal at Franklin and Touchmark using Lanark Street to the west. The northern area we're proposing to use as storage for our signal equipment, the poles, mast arms, and other equipment that is currently stored across the street. We've got a warehouse building, a heated warehouse building, and then the traffic operations, congestion management, and lab in one building down here closer to Franklin Street.
Gary, sorry to interrupt you. How many acres total are these two, is this entire site?
Mr. President, Commissioner Pickering, it's about 7.5 acres.
Okay, thank you.
How does that compare to our current site that we're taking operations from and moving to?
Mr. President, we own about 11.5 acres across the street for the whole Adams Yard, and traffic operations occupies about 3 acres of that. Currently, and the reason for a heated warehouse is we do have materials that can't freeze. So we have to be able to store our paint and some other materials in a controlled environment, as well as our paint striper trucks. We currently have to house them in the broom shed, which a striper takes the space that 2 sweepers take. So actually a few years ago, we had to lease additional space off of 38th Street, which I believe we have room for 5 or 6 sweepers there and 2 mechanics, because there's not room for all of us in the buildings that we currently have across the street. So phase 1, as Jennifer stated, for the Ustic site, we're proposing to go through the entitlements and design. We've been working with planner on the site plan. We'll have our pre-application meeting and neighborhood meeting with the City of Boise in the coming weeks. Schedule will be about the same, with completing that process through the city by the end of July. And we proposed at that time to engage architectural engineering services to design the site and the buildings and begin that process. So the next phase, and I'll show a more detailed list of this, we'd proposed to do the landscaping and frontage improvements along Franklin, build that collector roadway, and then pave the northern storage area, the north end of the site, so we can move our signal poles and mast arms and all that equipment out of the Adams Yard. That by itself takes up over 1 acre that could be utilized by the maintenance staff. So this would be the list of items that we would propose to take on next year. I propose to engineer and design the entire site and buildings so that we can then build them as we go. Again, build that collector roadway, do all the landscape buffers, fencing, and security upgrades. We are proposing 2 additional electronic signal technicians. It's not necessary because of the site, it's necessary because of the size of our system and the number of signals we have, FHWA guidelines recommend 1 technician per 40 signals. We're currently at 1 per 90. So I'm proposing 2 additional technicians in this year, and 2 years later another 2 and the associated equipment. So again, that would be this area.
Gary, this isn't related to that last slide. Maybe it's kind of spilling over into Jennifer's presentation, but how many vac trucks are you guys thinking about purchasing or need? 2? Okay, thank you.
Phase 3, we'd propose the middle portion of the site, the warehouse building, heated warehouse building, and the small building to the north there is a truck wash bay. So we do that, the associated grading and paving of the yard and the parking areas. And then, again, not related to the site, but just the growth of our system, the addition of a traffic operations engineer and congestion management. They're the ones that time the signals, program them. When we were working on the upgrades we did earlier this year with the school flashers and that new technology, they were instrumental in that as well. And then addition of 2 GEOs on our sign crew and the associated equipment. So again, that's that area of the site. Then finally, phase 4 would be the building for the traffic operations, the traffic management center, congestion management space for the traffic operations engineers, and then our construction lab.
Gary, well, can you explain a little bit about what the construction of these buildings is going to look like? Are they going to be, brick and mortar? Are they going to be pole buildings? Kind of what's your thought process?
Mr. President, Commissioner Pickering, the office type building would be more or less this type of construction. We can get into details of the materials when we're working with the architect and design review committee with the city. The warehouse buildings, I'm imagining, would be more of the steel type buildings. Again, we'd have to work with the architect in the city on what they require, as well as what would be the most economical and useful for our purposes.
Thank you.
Commissioner Pickering, Paul Daigle, your Chief of Staff. For all of the buildings, both the warehouse types with the TMC and with the maintenance, envisioning something very similar to what we have the Butler buildings across the street, as you mentioned, like a pole building, but something that we can build in digestible chunks that can be added onto. Economical, we can heat them. We're going to have to put, sprinkler systems, fire suppression, things like that. But, a Butler building you could add onto in digestible chunks. So if that answers your question.
It does. Thank you.
Okay, again, finally that phase 4, the office type building, finishing off the remaining little parking areas along that building, and then those 2 additional electronic signal technicians I mentioned before, and the 2 bucket trucks that they would require. So bottom line, over the next 4 years, we'd be looking at approximately $13.5 million for development of the site, the buildings, the additional cost of the 7 personnel and associated equipment. And again, as with Jennifer, the next steps is to complete that annexation and zoning process, and we anticipate being done with that by the end of July. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Great, thank you, Gary. Are there any questions?
No, Commissioner McKinney, I would just like to say thank you to Gary and Jennifer. Appreciate the drill down, lots of good details, so great presentations. And thanks to Heather also, Jennifer, for all the effort and hard work she put into this. I'm glad we're finally here and it's coming, it's in our sights. So thank you both.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner May. I agree, these will be great additions to our operations. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, next on the agenda is a presentation from Sean Martin on our ACHD lighting standards and requirements.
Commissioners, just to remind you, you asked for this presentation a number of weeks ago, so took Sean a little bit of time to get it together. But, and parts of it, we've asked him not to be too wonky, so take it away, Sean.
Great, thank you. Go right ahead, Sean, whenever you're ready.
Good afternoon. My name is Sean Martin. I am the Traffic Services Manager here at ACHD, and I'm going to give you an information briefing on our ACHD lighting standards and requirements. So the first thing to remember when we talk about street lighting is what Idaho Code says that ACHD is required to do, and it states in Code 40-4015B that within city limits, ACHD is responsible for the procurement and installation of highway lighting where it is primarily to the benefit of the motorist. And then it goes on to talk further that the energy and maintenance of lighting shall subsequently be a function of the city. So we put it in with our projects where it's primarily to the benefit of the motorist, then the city takes over ownership and maintenance. And that is true even of street lights that are on our traffic signal poles. Those are maintained by the cities. We have two sections in our policy manual that talk and relate to street lighting. The first one is 5106, roadway lighting. Installations by ACHD. We have a couple categories where ACHD takes the lead in street lighting. The most familiar would be capital projects. With our capital projects, we put street lights at public street intersections. We also put them at enhanced crosswalks, such as RFBs, whether those be at intersection or mid-block. ACHD will also install street lighting at roundabouts and on major bridges, such as the East Park Center Bridge over the Boise River. For continuous street lighting, ACHD will look at engineering study to determine if that is needed. One of the main things we look at when we look at continuous lighting is if we have a higher nighttime crash percentage, approximately 30%. If we have a higher nighttime crash percentage, then we will look at installing continuous lighting. A recent project that we've done is Cherry Lane out in the city of Meridian, from Meridian Road to Linder, where we install continuous street lighting. And in the event that we don't install continuous street lighting, we still do install empty conduit along both sides of the street on our arterial widening projects for future lighting if the city ever wants to come back in the future and install it. A couple other locations where ACHD will install street lighting is after a safety investigation, such as a rural curve that may have a run off the road incident problem where it may just be dark, such as Cole Road and Lake Hazel. Or we get also requests for rural school bus stops, sometimes out in off Pleasant Valley or Cunamora or somewhere along there where there's just no street lighting, but yet the school bus will stop there. We will install a street light.
So Sean, so we can't install lighting until after an accident has happened, or can we also do it preemptively if there's a dangerous curve like that?
Like the Cole Lake, Mr. President, Commissioner Pickering, like the Cole Lake Hazel project, we actually put that in with the project because we knew that it was going to be a dark and a higher likelihood of accidents or run off the road, and it has been. we have lots of run off the roads at that location.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry? Oh, that's right, I put Cole. Sorry, Orchard Lake Hazel. And installations by city or Ada County. There are times where cities will want to install street lighting. On ACHD capital projects, they may want to install street lighting where it's maybe not necessarily needed for nighttime crashes, but just they desire to have it. One location where we've done that is 5 miles from Fairview to Franklin. So when they want to do that, we enter into a cooperative agreement and then we include it in our project. Some cities, they kind of go back and forth where they want continuous lighting, but they may have a policy where they require continuous street lighting on arterials. Currently, the city of Meridian wants to have continuous street lighting on all arterials. The city of Boise does not. So it depends. We work with each city and work with their requirements. And then there may be times where we install decorative or historic lighting for the cities with our projects. And one instance that we did that was the Marine Split Corridor project. The city of Meridian wanted to have historic lighting, so we included that with our project through a cooperative agreement.
Sean, can I ask a question on that?
Certainly.
Where a city wants to have a higher level of lighting than what ACHD standards would normally call for, and it's an ACHD project, we're widening a street, improving a street, what have you, is the additional cost for a greater level of street lighting, is that partially borne by the city, or does ACHD bear that cost entirely, and then it's only the maintenance and upkeep of that gets transferred to the city?
Mr. President, typically the additional cost would be the responsibility of the city. We would do that through a cooperative agreement.
Okay, so where they want something above and beyond the normal standards, there's an agreement and they are involved in that?
Correct.
Okay.
And then also in policy 5106 covers street lighting through development. Typically subdivisions will install a street light at the intersection of a new road with an existing arterial or collector, and then also place them at internal intersections. And then once again, with subdivisions, they are also subject to city requirements. So inside subdivisions, the city requirements would take over and they would need to install them toward their requirements, such as any spacing requirements, micropath lighting, those kind of things. As well as marked mid-block crosswalks. Perhaps you might have a school within a subdivision. Typically we'd want to see some street lighting at those marked mid-block crosswalks. Our second policy section that covers street lighting is 5107. Talks about our roadway lighting design standards. The basis of our design guidelines are two documents. An IES publication called The Recommended Practice for Roadway Lighting, and an AASHTO publication, Roadway Lighting Design Guide. Some street lighting basics. No one size fits all when it comes to street lighting. It must be designed. I can't just say here that we're going to put street lights every 500 feet. Every site is different. Street lighting supplements vehicle headlights. Typically, vehicle headlights are good for your low volumes, your 25 miles an hour, but beyond that, you need to have something more to be able to see the further distance. Street lighting helps identify conflicts at intersections for all users. I said in the beginning that while we install it primarily for the benefit of motorists, there are other benefits that come along with that for pedestrians, bicyclists. And when we install them at intersections, that's where we have the conflicts with all users. We try to avoid hot spots and eliminate dark spots. Too much street lighting is not good, and not enough street lighting is not good. You really need to have that happy medium. And street lights are designed to shine downward, not upward. Some pedestrian scale lighting, you can actually get, upward lighting because they don't have the, where the typical street lighting will shine down, the pedestrian scale light will kind of more shine upward. And then some street lighting considerations. We consider in our guidelines pedestrian activity. We try to have a front light at our mid-block crosswalks, such as an RFB. So we have a pedestrian light or a pedestrian luminaire about 30 feet or approximately in front of the RFB. That is to help the visibility of the pedestrian. Street classification. We have different standards for arterials, collectors, locals. Intersection spacing certainly comes into it. Since we do place street lights at all public street intersections, the closer the street spacing would be, the more lights we're going to have. Pole height. Typically on arterials, we try to install a 40-foot luminaire. And on collectors and locals, we have a 30-foot luminaire. When you do go to the shorter height, though, you end up with additional poles. So it's a trade-off. And then mast arm length for a 5-lane roadway, you're going to end up with a longer mast arm because you're trying to get the light out across over the road than you would if you have a 2 or 3 lane. And then, of course, overhead power lines also need to be taken into consideration. There are things we can do. We install a lot of davit poles. You'll see those where they kind of come up and then the arm kind of takes off diagonally. That's to avoid power lines.
Sean, this might be a little out of order, but I'm just wondering, when I was I did a walkability workshop in Star about 5-6 years ago, and the corner of Star Road, and I don't know if it's Floating Feather or what have you, but obviously older construction, right? We haven't done anything over there. That intersection, it's a 3-way T intersection. There's a park on the corner. There's a lot of different pieces. There's absolutely no lighting, and it's 40 miles an hour. I'm just wondering, what's the ACHD's policy? Do we only do lighting on new construction and new design builds? Do we do them in addition to when we have some accidents and some really bad situations? Or do we also have programs where there's some really high need areas? Can we go in retroactively and put lighting in? Is that a possibility?
Mr. President, Commissioner Pickering, that's a great question. All the above, basically. We will install them with new construction, but we also will go out and look at intersections or site specifics to see if street lighting is needed, and we can go out retroactively and install streetlights, whether through traffic operations or like the Cherry Lane project that I mentioned, where that was obviously done after Cherry Lane was widened. We went in through a project that was, if I'm not mistaken, was through an LTAC safety problem or safety project. So we also work in those regards. We can have a project along a corridor or a site specific like Star and Floating Feather we can look at, see if it's needed, and then we can find a way to do it.
Thank you. And would that, sorry, another question as I'm thinking it through, would that need to be part of the integrated 5-year work plan, or is it less formal, I should say?
Mr. President, Commissioner Pickering, something like that where you're just talking about one intersection, those can be just sent to the traffic department through TELUS or through your commissioner or whatever, and if the work gets back to us, we'll go out and take a look at it and see if it's needed, and then we'll try to find one light. It's typically pretty easy to find a way to get it done.
Okay, thank you.
And that was the last slide anyway, so.
Great. Are there any comments or questions for Mr. Martin?
Sean,
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Oh, you're fine. Sean, you mentioned how obviously downward lighting, there's a lot of, and that's why I'm asking, like it seems like there's a ton of new technology coming out there with having more efficient lights that give out the right light that don't blind folks, and also from preventing light pollution. Kind of what's your philosophy about incorporating more of these like up and coming lighting options?
Mr. President, Commissioner Pickering, you're right, it always is changing. I remember when we first started here, everything was high pressure sodium, and now of course everything's LED. Mm-hmm. So we do look at new technology as they become available. We do try to pick lights that are off the city's list, because since the cities do take over maintenance of those, we try to take the ones that they want. So we work with the cities through that process as well. We're happy to look through new technologies, always being careful to not, as I don't like to be in the front of new technology. I always like to be somewhere in the middle. I don't want to be too far lagging, but I also don't want to be the one taking all the risks either.
Right. Thank you.
Commissioner Hanson, did you have some questions?
I just wanted to thank Sean. This is excellent. It's really helpful for us when we think about the consequences of what kind of expansion might happen in any area.
Great, thank you. And I'll echo that. Sean, thank you very much for the information. Very helpful, very useful. Are there any other thoughts before we conclude?
No, just thank you, Sean. Appreciate it.
All right, if there's nothing else, then I believe that concludes our meeting and we are adjourned. Thank you all.
I want to fix this thing, otherwise I still remember. I give it again. I don't know why I wrote